People, let's get this live rolling through to make sure we got these comments going. Let's see if we got this. To make sure we are live action. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Trying to make sure this is working. Someone make a comment so I can make sure I can see this right here. Make sure we're coming through clearly. Is everybody able to see me? Is everybody comment? Andrew, what up? My people on YouTube, can you guys see me? I want to make sure that we can see me here. Oh, there, it's working now. Okay. It wasn't working there at first. We had to make sure it was working. All right. Are we live action now? Technology, y'all. Technology. Renita, Bachelor, can you guys hear me? Comment below if you guys can hear me right now. We are live action on YouTube, y'all. Dr. Pinesett here, and we're talking about how to study for exams. Oh man. I gotta ban people already from the feed. Yeah. So people were talking about, hey, respond to my DM. I respond to your DM when I feel like it. I'm more interested in my students, helping them. So I'll get your DM when I get to it. Keenan, what up in the building? Keenan's one of my students. I know him. Julian's in the building. Julian's one of my students. I know him. So we're talking about how to study for midterms and final exams, and in particular, how to use previous exams, how to use old exams, how to use all the materials at your disposal to adequately prepare. If you guys do not know, our format is as such. We're going to start. I'm going to lecture. I'm going to give you 3 steps that you need to do to prepare for your exams using prior and previous and old exams. And then you guys get to ask any questions you have about test taking, about studying for exams, about cramming for exams, and so forth. That is our topic area tonight. So if you are ready to discuss this, guys, get to my YouTube channel right now, The Study Doc on YouTube, so you can ask your questions and get answers right now. Yes, Jeremiah, you're considered one of my students when you get into 5 Pillars, TST, my signature program, y'all. So here we go. Number 1, when we talk about using old exams, using previous exams, right? We all love to get these. And the obvious answer to do with them is to just review them, right? Just review them. Oh my gosh, that's it. That's done. But that's actually one of the worst ways, because it's what all students do, and teachers know that. And so they plan the test accordingly around that. And so what I want you guys to be able to do as students is to be more successful than that, right? I want you guys to have all the nuts and bolts of preparing for this exam. So the very first way that I want you guys to break down the exam, step number 1, is to identify testing patterns. What do I mean by that, guys? When I say identify testing patterns, what does that mean? Right? How many of you guys just dive right into your practice exams to start doing questions, seeing if you know it, trying to memorize them answers? Huh? It's not the right way. We're going to identify testing patterns. That's our first step in using tests the right way. So how do we do that? Well, we have to recognize that every professor, every subject's the same, right? Chemistry's the same, biology's the same, and so forth. But every professor in that subject is different, right? And this is the frustration sometimes with students, is that professors can be subjective, right? They can choose what they think is important. It's up to them to decide what's on the test and how they test it. And so we want to be able to diagnose and use their previous exams against them to figure out where their biases are, where we have opportunities to create a success. And my stream is being interrupted, so we might have to start again. I'm seeing this right now. If I'm coming through clear, y'all, let me know right now on YouTube we're coming through clear, because I believe we might have got interrupted here. I think we're still good. Okay, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep rolling. How it happens is how it happens, right? Is that what I was saying? So we're gonna identify testing patterns. And so there's a couple different ways I want you guys to go through this and to look at the previous exam and to see and to be able to identify how the professor is going to test you, so that way you are not fooled, you are not duped on exams. And for a lot of you guys, you go into exams, you feel confident, and then you get your head like shaved, like mine, right? When you go on that test, And so we want to get clear on that. So the very first thing that we want to figure out is, one, what type of exam is it? So when we look at the professor's previous midterms or previous final exams, what type of test is it? Is it multiple choice? Is it multi-step? Is it free response, or is it essay? And why this is important is because it determines how you will study for this exam. And the reason this is important is because you guys have multiple classes, right? Not just one class. So we have to understand that we have a finite amount of time that we can allocate to each exam. And so the average student says, okay, I gotta study for all these tests. This test comes up first, I'm studying for this test. And then second test, this test, that test. But the above average student, what they do is they get strategic with their time. And they say, okay, I have a finite amount of time, so I need to allocate it appropriately where my time will matter most. And if a class has an all multiple choice exam compared to a class that has an essay exam, which one do you think should get more time? Obviously, the essay exam, that's a more difficult exam, right? That's a higher level exam, so we need to have a better understanding of that material. Multi-step exams are important as well. So what makes multi-step exams challenging? Where you see this a lot is physics and chemistry, right? Where it's like question one, but question one has 6 parts. What makes this difficult is that it builds then on the concept. And so your ability to organize yourself and to make a calculation and then make another calculation and then make another calculation and to, right, maneuver under pressure is huge. And so if you have that sort of test, you want to get very facile at moving through your concepts and being able to pinpoint specific aspects of the equations or of the formula or of the concept, guys. So we want to understand, is it free response, essay, multi-step, multiple choice? The second thing we're going to check are, how are the concepts tested? So any question isn't any question isn't any question. How a question is asked is very important. And there are 3 main types. The first type of way that tests or concepts can be tested is regurgitation, which means I ask you, hey, what is element number 1 on the periodic table? That's a regurg question, right? Gravity goes which way, up or down, right? That's a regurg question because it's simple. Gravity is this, here's the definition, right? It's a simple definition response. The next level up is a discrete concept question, meaning that each question goes beyond just basic regurgitation of facts and forces you to conceptualize and work through something. However, right, the basic level of that is just one concept. So it's Newtonian mechanics, for example, or it's chemical reactions, stoichiometry. It's just one aspect of that equation. It's biology. It's just this aspect of the cell. Then we get to the highest level, which is cross-conceptual, where we're taking multiple concepts and weaving them together. And this is a big area where a lot of students struggle on exams because we've just focused on regurgitation, or we focused on learning something in isolation. But now, this is what happens in MCAT as well, is that they take what is simple and they mask it in a sea, in a nest of other concepts. So now you have to sift through what is there, find the concept you need to use, and link that to this other concept. And so an example of the way they do some physics courses is they may have a pendulum that then throws off a flying object. So now you've got a moving object, a projectile, and you've got a pendulum question all in one. And so that requires you to really have a good understanding, because you've got to go from one system to another system and weave those together to make one cohesive answer. And so we want to understand, how are they testing us so we can know what we should be looking for and how we need to be prepared for that. The third level that we're getting at, if you guys are with me, like the video right now. I know we're having some connectivity issues. I want to make sure we're still with me and we're still live action. Okay, still with me, still with me. Perfect. We are live action, y'all. Dr. Pinesett here. So number 4 is similarities and differences across years. So is the test structured the same every year? That's the first question we ask ourselves. Okay, is it the same every year? If it is, then go ahead and get at those questions, memorize them, right, and figure them out. If it's not structured the same, if every year it's a total grab bag, there's no relationship you can see between the old exams, then it's going to be very little use to you, because this professor intentionally switched things up, knowing that you're a savvy test taker and would be able to get their answers. The second is that does the professor reuse questions? If you see that the same questions are on the test every year, but they're just in a mixed up order, then what it what you should do to attack this test is you should look in the question stems for cues, words that are unique to that question that you can then cue and say, okay, when I see this word, the answer is, and you look for a cue word in the answer. Some students see that, oh, it's the same question, just in a mixed-up order, and they try to memorize the entire question and the entire answer stem. That's too difficult. The other thing that students do, the mistake they make, is they say, okay, this is the question, and when I have this question, the answer is C. But for a professor who's lazy, a super easy, low-hanging way to trick you is just to change the answer's ordering. So what was C is now A, and now you've gone through your whole test marking the wrong letter when you should have just found a Q in the question and a Q in the answer and linked those two. Yes, the GOAT is live, y'all, right? So we want to look for a Q in the question stem and a Q in the answer stem. That's going to help you get to those questions if they're using the same ones over and over again. If the question order doesn't change, it's even easier, right? Does the professor test the same factoids? Meaning, are there facts that this professor always hits on? So the opposite of this is that you have a professor who tests the same concept. And where this differs is if you see a professor has 10 questions on a test, and every year they're testing on the same factoid. So for example, you have the Newtonian equations, right? You have like 4 of them. If that professor always picks the same one for question 1, and then question 2 was always that same second equation, that's testing the same factoid over and over again. Does that make sense? And so then you will approach that saying, okay, listen, I have to know this aspect of it. But if instead the professor chooses questions based on concept testing, saying, okay, listen, I'm going to have for question 1, it's going to be some question about Newtonian mechanics. Then question 2 will be some question about magnets. And then question 3 will be some question about friction. That's a different setup than just testing a specific factoid. And if they're just testing, one of the mistakes students make is they look at a question and they say, okay, yeah, I understand how to use that equation. But if that professor mixes up which factoid you have to know and is going concept-based, then you're going to miss out on all the other opportunities inside of that larger conceptual context. Does that make sense to everybody? Make sure we're still getting that. Does that make sense to everybody? The difference there? Because people will go through and they'll memorize, oh yes, I have to know this equation. I have to know this set of things. But no. We got to look bigger and say, wait, is he mixing up the concepts? Is this all within that same family, but not exactly the same? So I need to make sure I'm covering my bases there and covering all that. Okay. So we understand that and then we prepare accordingly. Okay, that makes sense. Perfect. Okay. If you are given a key, okay, this is the last thing we're gonna do in point 1. This is step 1. We're breaking down and figuring out how this professor asks questions, how they test. So the last thing we're gonna say is if we're given a key, if we're given answers, right, of like, okay, this is what we're looking for in this answer. This is what the answer is. Don't just look at what the answer is. It's equally important to look at the grading criteria. On difficult exams, on any exam really, the separator will be partial credit, right? How many of you guys go to an exam like, oh my gosh, I get this partial credit? We want to set ourselves up to get as much partial credit as possible by understanding how partial credit is allocated. So when they give you a key, look at the point breakdown. Is it 1 point for this, 1 point for this, 1 point for this? What is being given points? And then that way we can take our studying and then also our approach on test day and cater it towards making sure we rack up as many partial credits as we can, even if we can't get the full credit. And by part of this, yes, this is recorded. We are live action on YouTube, y'all. If you guys are catching us on the podcast afterward, hello. But we are live action right now on YouTube. Thank you, everybody who's here with us. So we want to look at what partial credit is given for. A couple things to assess for and ask yourself, what are they getting partial credit for? 1, is it work effort? Meaning, if you put a bunch of unfinished equations on the page, will they give you partial credit for knowing what the equation was? Right? So that's work effort. So yeah, you didn't know how to do it, but you knew what the equation was. Right? So you just put a bunch of equations on it, you're like, oh, okay, this number, this number. So you're getting work effort. So even though it was wrong, you worked through it. Grammar. So if you have a free response type situation, whether it's in a non-science class or a science class, do you get graded on grammar? If you do, then it behooves you to write less and make sure that grammar is tight and on it. Conciseness. So as someone who used to grade papers when I was at UCLA, I used to get so indignant. I used to mark people off. I used to hate it. I used to give, instead of giving partial credit, I used to take away partial credit. for people who are overly wordy, people who would just literally throw everything at the wall, be like, okay, yes, it was said in the beginning of times there was one planet, and blah, blah, blah. And they tell me this whole long story. They're writing up the side margin. They say, put an arrow, say, listen, continued on the back. If you had to continue on the back, I wasn't reading the back, right? Because I knew you didn't know what you're talking about. You're just trying to waste my time and have me out of frustration, give you partial credit. I'm not doing that. But there are some professors who will give you credit, right, for just putting a bunch of stuff down on paper and say, listen, you know what? They made a bunch of points that were not valid, but the ones that were there, so we'll give them some points for that. On the flip side, you'll have professors who want concise answers, bullet points, a limited space, and in that case, you want to make sure that you are as concise as possible, and you pick out of all these things you throw against the wall, what are the highest yield for me towards getting these points. You want to look at if the professor is giving you credit for units. And so this is an overlooked way to get easy points on physics exams and on chemistry exams. A lot of times you may not know how to get the number, but if you know the final units, a lot of times they'll give you credit for the correct units. So if you write, for example, you're like, oh, the numbers will be something, or I don't even know what it is, but I'm gonna put it there, but I'm gonna put my correct units, right? You may not know it in scientific notation, or maybe you know it in scientific notation, that's how your calculator split it back out, but you don't know how to write it normal. Just write it how you have it. So if you get credit for those units or the organization of how you write things, go ahead and get those points. Recognize that they're giving you credit for those units, and then go get it. Does that make sense to everybody? That's our first step. So our first step is we're going to attack the test, and we're going to figure out, okay, what type of tester is this professor? What should I be preparing for? What's my level of depth? What's my time commitment? And then how am I going to approach this on test day to get the correct answers? Did that make sense to everybody? That's step one. We got 2 more steps coming at y'all. Everybody still with me? Yeah, units come in clutch on MCAT too. It's a huge hint as to what you should be doing. Okay, perfect. All right, everybody's learning? We here. It is clearly a hot day in SoCal today because I am sweating, y'all. I ran in here from work and I am sweating. It is hot as a, we are having, I would say hot as a biscuit is my expression in this place. All right, so step number 2, identify the high yield concepts. So I saw Kasim put this in the box earlier. Kasim's one of my 5 pillar students. If you guys are not already in my study course, guys, get into my study course. Get to my website, study.com, and get my study course, because one of the most important things, right? My course is called The 5 Pillars of Studying Less and Getting Better Grades. And one of the most important aspects, if you want to be able to study less and get better grades, is that you have to be able to separate. You can't study everything and be studying less. So you have to be good and get skilled at identifying what is high yield and what is not so high yield, what is testable and what is not testable. And when you can start to separate those things, you can then allocate your time and your energy towards what's high yield, towards what's going to show up on the test, and that's going to save you time. It's going to improve the results you get from your studying, and it's going to improve your score on test day. So separating high yield and low yield is super important. So we want to use these old exams to identify what the high yield concepts are. So a common mistake that students make when they review old exams, they just go through and they memorize the questions and the answers, right? They assume they're going to have that question or one that's very similar. But instead, that's a very limiting perspective of the exam, and it's a limited approach to using this resource. Instead, what I want you guys to do is read through the questions on the exam. As you read through these questions, okay, don't just do the question. Read through the question and identify the core concept being tested. Identify it. Okay, so listen, oh, you know what? They're testing me on cell membrane. Oh, you know what? They're testing me here on algebraic formulas. They're testing me on this. Identify what's being tested. Okay? Julian, see you later. Have a good time at work. I know we're late in the evening today, right? Identify what the concept is being tested, right? Then, once you identify that, I want you to make sure you know not just that one situation. Take the time, and we call it elaborative interrogation. I want you to ask yourself, okay, what are all the things? This question was about this concept. What are all the related concepts to this? What is my understanding level of these related concepts? Where can I find more information about these concepts? Then you find that information and you learn that information. And you want to make sure that you understand those concepts. So a lot of people go through the test and they'll read the question and say, oh, it's testing this. And they'll work through the answer, but throughout it, they're going back and they're checking their notes, they're checking their book and so forth. That's problematic because it creates this bias of you feeling like you know this, but you had to lean on your notes in your book, which you won't have during the test. So instead, what I want you guys to do is to take the time to step away and keep the question alive. So we don't attempt to answer the question, we're identifying the concept, and then we're taking this time to review and check ourselves and say, wait, do I know this stuff? Giving ourselves an opportunity to beef up our knowledge. Now that our knowledge is beefed, then we can go through and we can go through the question. Does that make sense? Exactly. Let it marinate, y'all. Let it marinate. We want to make sure we're creating this understanding. So we don't just do the questions. Instead, we identify the concepts and we understand. We create an opportunity to check our understanding, an opportunity to clarify, to concretize, to deepen our understanding. And then we go and do the question and we create the opportunity to understand, to actually have done that question. Okay? Step number 3 is in the middle of this. We want to practice those high yield concepts. And so when I say do this question, a lot of you guys, okay, do the question, it's obvious. But I want you guys to get more meat out of it. So we're going to go through practicing it effectively. Once you do a practice test question, it is dead. So one of the mistakes people make on the MCAT is they do the same Q bank 15 times. I've been through UWorld 4 times. That doesn't make you smart. That makes you inefficient, right? That means that you aren't sucking the juice out of these questions. Once you go through a question, that question is, for all intents and purposes, for the most part, dead to you. So repeating the same question, make over and over and over and over again, all it does is make your percentage go up, right? Oh my gosh, my percentage, the first time I went through this was 60%, now it's 80%, I'm improving. No, you're just biasing yourself because you've seen that question before. You've seen that answer before. Instead, what I want you to do is, hi Alex. Instead, what I want you guys to do is to focus in on creating active first rep, right? First time seeing it, practice opportunities. The way we do this, right? We've identified the high yield concept. We've taken the time to go and learn about that concept and the related concepts. Instead of doing that question on the test, which is going to be hard and difficult and complex, it's on a final or a midterm exam, right? A previous one. I want you to go to that section of the textbook. I want you to go to that section of homework that you did that week where that concept was assigned, right? Using your syllabus. So you know what? They tested me on electromagnetivity. Okay, well, electromagnetivity was covered in week 3. So I'm going to go to my week 3 notes. I'm going to review those notes. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to look at what the assignments were for that week. And I'm going to attack the assignments for that week to see if I can get those questions correct. This now gives me the opportunity to learn, right? To make meaning of the material, and then gives me an opportunity to practice said concepts, to get that skill level up. And then once I've done that, I can flip back to my full-length exam. I can flip back to my practice exam, and I can go to that question that is maybe multi-step, that is maybe free response, that is maybe more difficult than what was in, right, on a weekly assignment. And I've already built my knowledge, built my practice. So now I'm hitting the big dog. And if I can do that question independently of my notes and of my book, now I've developed test level proficiency. And I know when test day comes, I can be confident that I will hit it on that concept, that I can get those questions right. And I can go in confident, and not only confident in a false sense, confident in a true sense that I proved it to myself that I know I can get it. And so if you guys can do this, right, we talk about building confidence with small wins. All those practice problems you're doing are going to build those small wins. And then when you can knock out that previous exam with no help, you are going to be confident that you go into that test and you get it done. No anxiety, just executing. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, yes? Okay. That's 3 steps, guys, for breaking down your exams. Super easy, super simple. The bonus step is if you have time, right? It is finals week. Or even if you don't have time, I typically don't recommend group studying. But one of the areas where group studying can be great is to get new perspectives on things, particularly when you haven't been paying attention and you don't have a great perspective. Meaning you get towards finals week, it's crunch time, you got to cram, If you did it all by yourself, it'd be very uphill and very difficult. Instead, what I want you guys to do is to form a study group. Be the leech. So the reason I don't like study groups is because oftentimes somebody's leeching off of you. Because hopefully you've taken the time, you've gotten ahead, you've studied independently. But in this case, if you're behind or it's finals week and you're having some confusion, get a study group together. And in this study group, I want you guys to do a couple different things. One, I want you guys to go through and I want you guys to discuss, not, okay, listen, teach me stuff. I want you guys to discuss test predictions. So take a survey. Hey guys, what do you think is going to be on the test? What do you think is going to be on the test? What do you think on the test? And then write all of those concepts on the board. Then one by one, go through and have people explain them. And say, listen, I thought this was high yield from this concept. Oh, this is the way I remember this, the way I think about it. Okay, when I get on these problems, I know it can be tricky when you get here, but this is the way you're going to do it. And then bam, and we run it through that way. Does that make sense, everybody? So you're going to have a discussion of what is high yield, and we're going to have a discussion of how to get at it, how to remember, how to approach, how to apply, so we can attack the test at a higher level. And we can do so efficiently, because if we had to do it on our own, right, we couldn't come up with those perspectives. Maybe our friends have actually been paying attention to lecture and we haven't. So it's a nice way to play catch up with the course. You use their knowledge base. One of the things we talk about is building a brain trust. So in getting to medical school or getting to your goals, the network you build, right, the mentors you build, it's a brain trust. These are people who allow you to use their brain as your own. And so we want to crowdsource. We want to use our friends' brains who may be more informed than us to make ourselves informed and be able to get at what's high yield on this exam and get at it effectively, guys. So that's what I have planned for you guys for today. Was that useful? We're going to go to the Q&A portion now. So you guys have questions about studying for tests and so forth. Ask those questions and let's get some answers going, y'all. Get to my YouTube channel right now. Let's go. We are live action, y'all. If you guys are enjoying this video, make sure you like this video right now. I'm Dr. Pinesett. We are talking about studying for exams, and we just had a 27-minute lecture, and now we're moving on to Q&A. So if you guys have questions about studying, now is the time to ask them, guys. Let's get informed. This is free Q&A with me. I think we're having a connectivity issue again. All right, so because we're having such a connectivity issue, we're going to cancel Q&A for tonight, and we'll be back next week, guys. We'll be live every single Wednesday, 5 p.m., bringing you guys a topic. If you have a particular topic you want to talk about, put a comment in the box below. I'll make sure I add it to the list and make sure we address that topic, guys. This channel is all about making you guys more positive, more productive, getting ahead. So if you guys are ready to level up as students, as pre-meds, this is the place to be. Make sure you guys check out my website. Oh, wait. Oh, whoa. I'm trying to get questions in here. I thought we were frozen for a second. Now all of a sudden it's like a flood of questions. Was there no reception? It comes back. No, we're not talking about low GPA stuff. That's from last week. So we'll address that at a later time. Macy's one of my students. I'll answer this question. How can we study chemistry effectively? So for everybody, if you are in a chemistry course, chemistry is the geometry of the science world. In that a lot of people think that the issue with their chemistry is that they don't get whatever's being tested that week, whatever chapter they're on. Oh my gosh, I'm struggling with this. The reality is if you're struggling in chemistry, 8 times out of 10, it's the simple fact that you have not learned basic chemistry well. Your foundation is not strong. And when it comes to chemistry, the periodic table, y'all, is everything. I loved chemistry exams because whenever we had a chemistry exam, they would give us a copy of the periodic table. And I was like, oh my gosh, these guys don't recognize. They're literally giving me the opportunity to have a cheat sheet. Because the periodic table, the reason it's laid out the way it is that it gives you guiding principles of chemistry and of these elements that tell you what's going on. Electronegativity, right? It tells you about how they're going to react with their electrons, what their core is, what their proton situation is. It tells you all these amazing things, what they're going to behave like. This element is like this element because they're in the same column and so forth, right? Group. all of these things. And so what I want you guys to do if you're struggling in chemistry is go back to chapter 1. Not chapter 1. Chapter 1 is like, what is chemistry? Chapter 2. Go to chapter 2 where they start breaking down how things relate. When they start talking about that periodic table, get chapters 2, chapters 3, chapter 4 down really well, and you'll start to see that, oh my gosh, when we're doing balancing equations, really what this is just basic algebra. Really what this is understanding where these elements want to be, what their base charge is, right? When we talk about like all these different things and predicting what substrates are going to be, or which one of these is going to actually pick up the molecule. Like you start to think about it that way and understand these interactions, that's going to unlock chemistry for you. But a lot of times what happens is people get behind in chemistry and they start that rushing process, right? Where they're rushing, trying to catch up. And so they're constantly charging ahead into new chapters without having a good understanding of the basics. And I can tell you right now, I'm old. I haven't taken chemistry in many a moon, but I could do better than a lot of people on chemistry tests right now because my foundational elements are very strong. So I could quickly get up to speed and do well in a chemistry course. So Macy, does that answer your question? So start with the periodic table. Get there. The other thing that people struggle with in chemistry is the algebra of it. Because like I said, a lot of it is proportions, relationships amongst numbers, and understanding how to find the missing variable. And so if your algebra is weak, that's why I call it the geometry of the science world. If your algebra is weak, you're going to struggle in geometry. If your algebra is weak, you're going to struggle in chemistry. So get your algebra game on tight, get your periodic table on tight. All right. Thank you guys for joining me. What's my take on using a recorder? I gotta check this. What's my advice on using a recorder? I have a section all about this in 5 Pillars course talking about how we can make the best use of how do we record lectures, how do we go about that, and then also using recording. So my advice on a recorder for a lecture, I have 2 sides of the same coin. You go to a lecture and you're like, man, I want to use a recorder. I want to record this lecture. My question to you is first, why are you using the recorder? For many students, that recorder is an excuse not to pay attention in lecture. For many students, that recorder is an opportunity to be lazy and not take notes. For many students, that recorder, right, is actually a handicap because you're going to spend a lot more time going back and re-listening to lectures instead of deepening your understanding. It's going to be an additional first pass. Does this make sense? So if you're a student and you are using a recorder to supplement your ability to take notes effectively in lecture, you got to change that. And one of the ways you change that is by preparing for lecture. You should go to lecture prepared, having pre-read, having pre-made some notes to facilitate your lecture learning. That's the first thing I'll say. Then if you are going to be recording lecture, the bad way to use a recorder is to listen to whole lectures over again. I hear people all the time, I put the lecture on my drive and I learned so much. No, you don't. Better would be if you use that recorder to re-listen to particular aspects of lecture where either you were distracted, where they were talking really fast, there was a high yield element, you want to make sure you have all the details, so you listen to pieces of that recording, not all of that recording, because otherwise you're just you're doubling your work for no real reason. The other thing I would like to say, if you guys like to listen to recordings in the car or on your run or whatever, because you feel like you get an extra rep that way, make it a high quality rep. Listening to a teacher's lecture is not a high quality rep, but listening to a recording of you discussing your concepts in a high level way in your understanding is great, because that is a primary source material. And this is a complex topic we won't talk about here today, but essentially in studying, you want to get to resources that you have created as soon as possible, because repetitions of that material will be the most sticky and the most high level for your understanding and for your retention. So instead of listening to the professor talk, why don't you make a recording of yourself talking and listen to that? So Jacqueline, did I answer your question? I think I did. Yeah, so Mac asked a good question. Hi, Dr. P. As a student in medical school who doesn't get access to past exams, what resources do I look for to get those questions? Thanks. Okay. So in medical school, oftentimes they won't give you old exams. And the reason they don't do that is because they know at this point you are a desperate student, and also you at this point should be a fairly decent student. So you will know how to break down a test. So they don't do that. So instead, guys, a huge resource. So I always say to my medical students, right? Because I have lots of medical students who are in my study program. I always tell them, I said, rule number one, put it in the box actually. I want to test my students. What's rule number one of starting medical school, guys? What do I tell you guys about med school success? If you want to be a great medical student, what is the first thing you must understand, you must avoid, you must not do? What do I say about succeeding in medical school? What is the big trap of starting medical school? Perfect, Kasim. Yes. My rule for starting medical school is do not listen to the medical students. Get far away from your classmates because there's a bunch of people who think they have to know what's going on, and so they will act like they know what's going on when really they are just as lost as you are. However, a good resource for you is the older medical students, not in general. Don't listen to them about how to study. But if you go to them with targeted questions, they can be a great resource for you. You go to your MS2 and you say, hey, you took cardiology with this guy last year. What did he test you on? How did he test? Does he use the same questions? What did you see on your exam? Was it easy? Was it hard? Where do you wish you spent more time at? What did you study that you wish you hadn't studied? Right? All of these questions will allow you to get at what that past experience is. So you're essentially using this student as a prior exam. You're not asking them how to study, you're asking them what to study. Yes, yes? So that would be my advice for you. So if you were in a course and you don't have prior exams, utilize students who were previously in that course, not to tell you how to study, but to guide you into what to study and to what depth and what approach, right? So how am I getting at this material? That's how you want to use other people, particularly in medical school. Don't listen to medical students about how to study because a lot of them don't know how. They're just as lost as you. Tony says, how would you go about studying for exams where the instructor does not make previous exams available? So Tony, I think I just answered that question. Perfect. Devin says, I feel confident going into final exams, but I'm going to start studying for the MCAT this summer. How big of an adjustment is it studying wise for the MCAT? It's entirely different, guys. This is so important. Devin, I appreciate you answering that question. If you guys do not know, I have a phenomenal MCAT course. It's super affordable, but it's super powerful, guys. The MCAT is a different animal of an exam. It's not like studying for your regular courses. So you must have a tailored approach to studying for the MCAT. My course will give you that, guys. So check out my website, sitejack.com. I'll put a link to my MCAT course in the box below, but with a little discount for you guys. But check that out and understand that when you get to the MCAT, it's an entirely different approach. However, if you've gone about studying for your exams, for your courses, and studying for your exams well, it will set you up because your fund of knowledge will be strong and your study skills will be stronger for the MCAT. So doing well in your classes will set you for the MCAT. When it comes to the MCAT, we have my compounded question interrogation system. CQIS is what I teach my MCAT students. That's our approach to getting at question banks and questions and question-based learning. So check out the MCAT course. You guys can hear my kids just got here. You can hear my children. Hey, who is that? Do I hear Dre's feet? Okay, so my kids just got home. Chantel says, so I'm in medical school and we have 8 old exams. How should I go about that? So Chantel, just like we just talked about, break those exams down, see what's tested, and walk through those 3 steps I talked about earlier. Yeah, so Spencer asks, I need help with making physics equations sticky. Are there any resources you would recommend? Yes, that resource would be your own brain. So one of the issues that people have with physics is that they try to look at physics. Physics can be very abstract in a lot of ways, but physics is the study of the physical world. And the disconnect there is that we don't take the time to really see how this abstract physics equation applies in our everyday life. And so for you guys, in terms of making equations sticky, I want you to think about every variable. I want you to think about every equation as a real life scenario and assign each of those variables a role in your real life scenario. So for example, you might say, like, I'm playing baseball with my son. You might say, okay, listen, I'm going to take this baseball. This is an object that has a mass. I'm going to wind back, and the farther my arm goes back, the more force I can generate. When I generate that force on that ball, I'm going to create an acceleration. That ball is going to travel at a certain speed, and it will decelerate thanks to gravity, certain equation. It will change the trajectory of that ball. What will the speed be at this point when it hits my son in the nose? Right? Like, so you can look at it that way and think about the equations and assign variables to various aspects of real life situations, because it will make it more sticky and more understandable of why that makes sense. Does that make sense, Spencer? Does that help you out there? If this is helpful to you guys, like this video right now. All right, this connection is killing me right now. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to end here. We're going to be back live next week because I can't deal with this connection. It's frustrating the heck out of me. So I appreciate you guys joining me this week. Like I said, lots of resources for you guys in the box below. Check out my videos. Check out my website, thestudydoc.com. And I hope you guys will join us every Wednesday. We're live 5 p.m. These episodes are uploaded to the podcast after the fact. Enjoy, guys. Have a wonderful day. And as always, we end. No excuses. Just dominate, guys. Like this video. Subscribe. Turn on notifications if this is your first time with me, y'all. I'll see you guys all next time. That's it for another episode of the Study Doc Show. Show your love by smashing the like button and commenting in the box below. Today is the day, guys. No more excuses, no more complaining. You're going to take your future into your own hands. You're going to dominate. You're going to be successful. I challenge you. What are you going to do today to make your life better? Get to my website, thestudydoc.com. Grab a free ebook. Sign up for a free webinar. And if you're really ready to transform, enroll in one of my life-changing courses or coaching programs. You have greatness inside you. Let me show you how to unlock it so you can dominate and make your dreams a reality. No excuses, just dominate.